about some of the people who put this extraordinary show together. I should say the first two premiere on Wednesday, and then an episode a week. The finale will be July 24th on Apple TV+. Let's bring them out because I've got some questions. David E. Kelly, executive producer, showrunner, and writer. Director and executive producer, Greg Yatanis. Director and executive producer, Anne Sawitsky. And the guy we're presuming everything about, Jake Gyllenhaal. David, I want to start with you. First of all, congratulations to all of you. David, the book, Presumed Innocent, came out now 37 years ago. So what was it about this story, though adapted in your innovative way, that you wanted to tell right now?
Well, I love the book, a fantastic book. It was gripping and I was arrested by it 30 years ago. I also love the movie. But with the viability of limited series, it occasioned us to, or gave us the opportunity to go deeper than the movie could, just because we had more time. Scott Turow is, I obviously love the legal genre. I've been doing a little bit. Scott Turow is kind of the standard bearer for it. So he's actually, Scott, can I embarrass you? You're out there somewhere. Can you stand up? There's no better writer who captures the nuance of the law and also develops character at the same time. And I'm a sucker for both the law and the pathology of character development. The characters were so rich that I didn't hesitate. Once the opportunity presented itself, I said, oh boy, let's go.
Jake, this is your first series, and I'm curious what David was just saying, that you could really kind of dig deeper into some of the things. So what was it like getting to really explore Rusty for that long? I mean, the series is 8 episodes, so you have a lot of time with him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think that David does so beautifully is I think these morally ambiguous characters are so, he writes them with such richness, and I think, though the interesting part of it was that when we began shooting, we only had, 3 episodes. So in a weird way, I have never been a part of a process where you discover as you go. And so the tension of not knowing, I lived with when you're playing it. You didn't, we discussed it and we obviously had conversations about how it could go, but you lived with that. So obviously also just being surrounded by an incredible cast of actors who were bringing just so many interesting ideas every day as we went along with it. But we joke sometimes, every room that Rusty walks into, it's just like, you suck, But when you have that coming at you from incredible actors, it makes it all the more fun. So it was a day in and day out, very interesting experience.
I want to just follow up on what you said, because you said that there were just a few episodes written at first. Do you mean that you did not know how the show was ending? At what point did everyone know what episode 8 was going to tell?
Yeah, we knew where we were going, but we were pretty circumspect with releasing data. When we worked for Apple, they said, don't ever release data. So, we kept some secrets, but, and honestly, truthfully, Rusty is such a fascinating character that I still don't claim to know him, having spent a year with him. I mean, it's a real, he's such a contradictory being. I mean, we're talking about a man who believes very much in truth, and yet tells a rather profound and destructive lie. He's in the business of justice and goes about subverting it. He is a devoted family man who betrays his wife and kids, and he's a loyal friend, and he betrays Raymond. And yet, Yet Rusty is all those things. He is truthful, he is about justice, he is a devoted family. So what corrupts him and what causes the corrosives of his behavior, it's fascinating. It was a great exploration in the book, and we got to even delve into it more in the series. And when you get a complicated character like that, it's just fertile storytelling ground. And I'm not sure I really answered your question, other than the secrets that go to the series and to the character. The secret of the character continues to live on for me.
Jake, did you know when you started filming?
No, well, there were discussions, but I think that was the interesting thing. I mean, when you're working with a mind like David's and with JJ, there is the collaboration of coming, even something like Malto initially, before Peter was cast, it was written differently, and then David started writing to Peter, So these things are a kind of ever-changing, moving thing.
And you directed these first 2 episodes so beautifully that everyone I think a lot about the end of that first episode when Rusty realizes, this is not just a regular work meeting, I'm a suspect now, and it's so tense, and the way the camera's moving, and the way you're focusing on Jake, and it's such an intense moment. And I would love you to talk about that, about filming that, or if there was another scene in these 2 episodes that we saw that really stood out to you.
Well, I think what you already was talking about is that unsettling feeling they want to capture throughout the whole time. And coming in as a Norwegian into this very American show, I think there's a really amazing tradition in American television that you have the writing with the dialogue and everything. But in our cold, more depressive Norway, where the sun does not shine, it's about seeing all the kind of things that are happening between the characters without the words. So I think that was a very fascinating combination between Dave's writing and me coming in with another kind of set of eyes. And me and Jake always had these talks, and he was like, "You're so weird. You're so weird." And then he would say, "Good talk." And I said, "Good talk."
No, I mean, I have to say, both Greg and Ann, they are such beautiful, sensitive people, and so loving, respectful of the performer, and from the very beginning, Ann set a tone and a space where there was a real sense of openness and vulnerability, and I always felt very safe in front of her camera, it was a place where, particularly because you're playing these very morally ambiguous things, and this character is saying this thing and believing something else, but you really have to feel like you have someone on your side there, that really loves the character with you, and she was there from the beginning doing that.
Greg, we'll get to see your episode starting with episode 3, and we see a lot of what's going on in the courtroom, and I understand the details are so thought out. Even I understand that one of the suits were inspired by To Kill a Mockingbird, by what Atticus was wearing. And when you were approaching shooting those scenes in the courtroom, what did you want to convey? I mean, there's such a wonderful lineage of great courtroom moments in Hollywood. So what were your inspirations for that?
I mean, I think cinematically, we talked a lot about, The Insider and as kind of a point of reference, but in terms of courtroom, leading up, because I was supposed to come in for 2 episodes, and Jake's like, "You can't leave," and so I stayed until I got back to do the finale. So came for 2 and stayed for 5. So it was, and in knowing that I was going to have the courtroom coming, watched Orson Welles' and Compulsion, watched The Verdict again, just to reconnect with what Paul Newman's work was in that, and just the direction of the courtroom and how to trust the cast in that regard, and just knowing that we were going to have such dynamic personalities in the courtroom and the breadth of actors. I was excited, really excited to get to the courtroom. David Knuth was our like on-set tech advisor, so just making sure that like any of my lawyer friends would all like feel like they were like nobody was that we stayed accurate and honest like on the actual day in terms of how people move and where they stand and all the things that felt more true to form.
But you've all mentioned the cast, and David, can you talk to us about assembling? I mean, it's every person is extraordinary. I mean, Jake mentioned Peter, Bill Camp, Ruth Negga. I mean, it's just one incredible performance after another.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, up and down the line, they were all just amazing. I should probably now embarrass Jeannie Bachrach, our casting director, who's out there somewhere. I would watch dailies and kind of pinch myself. And some of them were doing things that I never anticipated. I joke with OT, De La Guardia, and the eccentricity that he brought to that part. It's not something I wrote or anticipated, but from day one when we saw it, we said, whatever he's doing, just tell him to keep doing it. Peter as Malto, I mean, the chemistry that they had with each other, you just don't always get it. I mean, you can go for it every time, and you can be satisfied with the words, but at the end of the day, you're turning it over to the directors, and then the actors, and the chemistry that they have as a group, you hope for, and this was kind of thrilling to watch them, do their craft. So I'm lucky.
Yeah, Jake, it's one thing to have chemistry, it's another thing to have your main antagonist be your brother-in-law. So how the two of you are, we saw a lot of it here and it continues, are truly electric on screen together. There's so much tension in those scenes. So how was it working with him?
He's
Fun.
It was really fun. Yeah, it was fun. He's one of the I respect him beyond respect him. He is the acting guru kind of our family, and he has always set the tone, a demand for an honesty. He does as my brother-in-law in life, and he does in those scenes as well. And I think that working with him was a joy. It was like, I think people were excited to see what was going to happen on set, between us in the scenes, and that just gave us more fuel. It felt like we were able to bring, we know what our craft is, we do it at work, and then he was actually with me, living with me in LA, and then flying on the weekends back home to his daughters, and then coming back at like 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and then starting shooting at 6, and we go through the week, but we would just come back to work and have dinner at night, and then fight each other during the day. It was a real honor and a joy.
Tell me about making this feel so contemporary. There are references to the way that people are obsessed with true crime in this, which feels very contemporary. Just the way it's shot feels very contemporary. There are things about the legal world and about crime that just weren't there when the book was written, DNA evidence and things like that. So what were the things that you wanted to make sure to interject into the scripts and in the story?
The modernizing it was not that heavy of a lift. Certainly with the crime gathering techniques, that's all changed. The forensics also now with cell phones and street corners being monitored now, and having to do things that wouldn't be captured on camera. That was a bit of a challenge sometimes, but the themes and the fundamentals, they were all there in the book. We have different ideas of what marriage is now, and that I think was realized with the relationship between Barbara and Rusty. Barbara's maybe in the book and the movie, I think we our access to Barbara was through Rusty's version, and he was an unreliable narrator. And in our adaptation, Barbara is definitely her own character. So maybe the way we treated marriage was a little bit different. Um, as for infidelity, I mean, the roots of infidelity are pretty tenacious. They're as true now as they were 30 years ago. So I really found that the architecture of the book was so solid that we didn't have to make a lot of whole changes to make it right today, other than the ones I spoke of. Again, it's a testament to Scott's writing. I mean, he knows the law, and he knows character. So whenever I wobbled as a writer or felt with Shar and Mickey, our other writers, you know, where do we want to be, I would go back to that book and look at that book, and it was the guide.
I loved getting to know the family more, Rusty's family more. I loved the relationship with Elizabeth Marvel and with Nega's characters, and getting to explore that, and that they're not these my husband's being a nightmare, you know, kind of women. And it was just thrilling to be able to really feel these characters be fleshed out. How was it for the two of you directing these episodes when you have these very wildly different moments that you're directing, whether, you know, at home or these more intimate moments and then these much bigger moments?
Well, I think, as you were saying that, like going back to the book and all the themes were there, but I do think that we were kind of elevating the female voices also in the show. For example, Carolyn's character, played by Renate Reinsve, is in many ways, or I remember her more from Ruby as more like a femme fatale, and we tried to work that through making her more raw and real and having that into a more complex relationship, that you believe that there was some real passion, there was some real kind of friendship, there was some real respect between them, and trying to layer that, of course, which is easier in than an 8 episodes show. You can go deeper into very many relationships, also into marriage. I think kind of one of the brilliant things that they put into this script was going deeper into the family and the characters within them. How much can a marriage bear? How much can love bear? How much? Where's the limits? And I think that's one of the things that Jake did so brilliantly in this. He's kind of twisting and turning, and he's in a very unique way showing so much vulnerability. I remember when we were working together, he was always asking, how can we do this different? How can we do like this scene? It's this scene, but we just did a scene. How can I just twist it? Like, we want to see all the shades of him as a modern man, which I love, and I think he really nailed.
I think the family dynamic, though, is the essence of sort of like the trial of the family and then the actual trial. The juxtaposition between the two is you finish with the family and then you go, oh, okay, well now we have this older world we get to go back to, and you're bouncing back and forth between the two. And I remember speaking to David very, very early on and saying that the family was the thing that was most interesting to me, was what goes on there, how does it affect them, where does the judgment come eventually from the children as well, how does the relationship change, and those scenes and some of them coming up, you know, were some of the most interesting ones to play, you know. As brilliant as the writing and the acting is in the courtroom scenes, I really think it becomes like its own courtroom too, in the house.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, Greg, I want to go to you in a second, but there's a real, I'm curious what, the way that Rusty has to deal with his family, there's this question of the presumption of innocence, both in a courtroom and in a family, and who stands by you, and what do they assume, and what do they take for granted. So tell me about filming like that, like what Jake was saying, with having these two worlds.
No, I think, I mean, it's everything they just said. It was, I mean, and that's what personally attracted me to this, is the family in crisis, in peril, and, you know, we shot, you know, in sequence the home scenes, so those were, in the final days, like, we were all like wiped out, you know, emotionally, because the pressure cooker of the trial and how it keeps, you know, invading the house and the, you know, the sanctuary of the house, and it's like it's from within, it's from the outside. It's like there is danger and peril at around every corner.
There's also the design of the house itself, and then the design of the courtroom. Like, you know, the courtroom itself has like these really high ceilings, and there's a bit of breadth to it. You know, when you get into the house, the ceilings were always so low, and Anne had set the tone, at least, like, you know, the lighting of the house is very dark. You know, so you'd enter back into the story, and you know, some of these things we shot on stage, so it's like you're going back and forth to these different places, and it becomes, it's very interesting, the choice that was made, the juxtaposition between these two worlds. You did psychologically start to feel that pressure. You come back home and the ceilings were smaller and it was darker, and like, and then they would shoot it in a very, it was very interesting the way Anne shot differently than Greg, and that, you know, when Anne was shooting it, you know, she was observing. Sometimes Greg would come even after when we started to move into it, come into the table and like sit within the table, but always give us room. You know, there's always a space within which we could kind of breathe and then start the scene again. So there's a reality to what was happening. That added even more pressure. You know, it was very interesting.
David, you've written so many incredible scripts in your day. Was there a particular scene that you were, I don't know, especially proud of, or that you were struggling to crack as a writer?
Man, I don't really remember. They were all, for me it always starts with the characters, so the scenes where the characters are really almost claustrophobic with their feelings, those are the ones that feel the richest to write, and when we see them on screen, executed on screen too, they're always fun. I mean, again, the plot of the book worked on its own level, but I think what makes the piece special is the character fragilities and struggles that are going on beyond and beneath that. And those scenes, and a lot of them are quiet scenes. I read a lot of words, too many words, but I think some of the best scenes were the quiet ones, that or the silences between the texts, where you see the characters not only struggling with their feelings, who they are, but how to articulate them with each other and protect each other and themselves as they interact.
Yeah, I mean, I think the look that J.Q. Rusty gives his family and gives Bill Camp in the second episode toward the end when he sees him at the table is volumes of words. So I thought that was really especially wonderful. Jake, I'm curious for you, if these guys were just saying that it was, you all felt kind of wrung out by the end. After finishing filming, what was it like to both leave this sort of epic thing behind and this character behind that you'd lived with for a long time?
I mean, first of all, it was an honor to work with all of these people, and it was a longer journey of storytelling than I'd ever been involved in, right? I mean, I'd never been told anything over 8 hours, it was 6.5 months of it. So, and also I had never experienced switching up filmmakers, I think, it was you become really close to the people you work with, and then all of a sudden Anne's gone for 2 months, and then Greg comes in, like, who are you? And then, and then you're like, don't go, Greg, and then, what are you doing back? It was like, it was that journey, and I think, though, such an incredible group of people made this thing come together long before I even joined up, and then after as well. And I'm pretty aware of that, knowing that after, it wraps, there's a whole group of people that are going to come take over and shape it all. But for me, it's just, a really incredible, very emotional journey. And I think one that I hope that the whole audience goes through when they see it, It's a really special story.
It is indeed, and not surprising, some of the reviews are already out and they're glowing, so I want to congratulate you all on this incredible show. I want to say again that the first two will premiere this Wednesday, and then an episode a week until July 24th for the finale on Apple TV+.
I want to thank the four of you so much for joining me, and thank you all so much. Thank you again. Thank you to Tribeca Village.